A little girl sat silently in the courtroom, rehearsed and controlled. However, one secret signal to a police dog prompted him to charge forward, halting the court proceedings. What transpired next shocked the judge and altered everything. Before we delve into today's story, please leave a comment below indicating where in the world you're watching from. And if you enjoy compelling police dog stories such as this one, please click that subscribe button. You won't want to miss future episodes. A stark light from the fluorescent fixtures in Courtroom 7B illuminated the gleaming oak and the serious expressions of those present at the downtown Chicago courthouse. Judge Eleanor Wilson's chambers had witnessed numerous custody disputes, yet this particular case created a palpable sense of tension. Officer Ryan Mitchell straightened his uniform collar, his steel blue eyes observing the room with a practiced and observant gaze. Next to him, Apollo, his 4-year-old German Shepherd partner, remained perfectly still, his dark coat reflecting the light of the courtroom. "All rise," announced the bailiff, as the Honorable Judge Eleanor Wilson took her place to preside over the case of Anderson versus Ellis. Officer Mitchell observed Apollo's ears move slightly forward, a subtle change that would likely go unnoticed by others. After 3 years working together in Chicago's K-9 unit, Mitchell had become adept at recognizing every nuance in Apollo's body language. Something had piqued the dog's interest. Mitchell followed Apollo's gaze to a small figure seated in the front row. 8-year-old Lily Anderson sat with impeccable posture, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes focused on the worn tile floor. Her navy dress and white cardigan appeared overly formal for a child of her age. Her brown hair was pulled back in a tight bun, accentuating the paleness of her face. While many children would be restless during court proceedings, she remained strikingly still. Beside her sat Claire Anderson, her mother, whose tired eyes and chewed fingernails revealed weeks of sleeplessness. Across from them was Marcus Ellis, a Chicago business mogul, stepfather of 3 years, and projecting an image of calm assurance in his well-fitted charcoal suit. His hand rested deliberately on the back of Lily's chair. Apollo stiffened a little, a shift so slight that only Mitchell observed it. The dog's training was flawless. He had remained composed during hostage negotiations, drug busts, and active shooter scenarios. However, something about this sterile courtroom or someone present had roused his vigilance. "Today we continue the custody hearing for Lily Anderson," Judge Wilson announced, her voice sharp against the quiet whispers. "I remind everyone that my sole concern is the welfare of the child." 21 days prior, Mitchell was conducting Apollo's routine weekly tracking drills at Jefferson Park. The crisp autumn morning air held the fragrance of moist soil and dropped leaves as Apollo navigated the obstacle course, his strong muscles moving with graceful accuracy. "That's it, boy," Mitchell had said as Apollo swiftly found the concealed training aid in a personal best time. "Perfect." Colleagues frequently quipped that Mitchell seemed to comprehend dogs more effectively than people. At the age of 34, following 12 years in law enforcement and the last 3 in the K-9 unit, he had earned a reputation for quiet effectiveness instead of engaging in professional socializing. His divorce 2 years prior had only strengthened his dedication to his work and to Apollo. On that Tuesday, they were concluding training exercises when the dispatch arrived, a standard welfare check on a child, prompted by a teacher's observation of concerning behavior changes, a situation that would not usually necessitate a K-9 unit. They were, however, the nearest to the residence, a luxurious townhouse in Lincoln Park. Claire Anderson opened the door, appearing initially surprised by the police dog until Mitchell clarified that Apollo was his partner. "He's completely harmless to civilians, ma'am," he reassured her as they entered a home that seemed like it could have appeared in an architectural publication. It was then that he first encountered Lily, cautiously observing from behind the staircase, her small face illuminating at the sight of Apollo despite her mother's apparent distress. "Lily has been experiencing difficulties recently," Claire had confided, speaking quietly. Her teacher had noted that she's become withdrawn at school, no longer participating as she once did. Mitchell had watched as Lily approached Apollo with a caution that appeared rooted in both fascination and fear. What he found remarkable was Apollo's reaction. The dog was focused intently on the child, his posture alert as it usually was when working. "Has anything changed at home recently?" Mitchell had asked. observing how Lily flinched at a sound from upstairs. Marcus is under a lot of pressure. Regarding his business, we all are. Claire responded a bit too quickly. He's a good provider. We're very fortunate. When Marcus Ellis came out of his office a few minutes later, his handshake was firm, his smile practiced. Officer, I understand your concern, but I want to assure you that everything is well here. Lily is simply adjusting to her new school. Doesn't that right, Princess? Lily had nodded obediently. However, Apollo's subtle growl was audible only to Mitchell's trained ear. Back at the precinct, Mitchell couldn't shake his unease about the Anderson Ellis home visit. Apollo's behavior had been unusual enough to warrant a note in his report, something he rarely needed to do with his meticulously trained partner. The following morning, Mitchell requested the case file pertaining to the family. An initial review revealed nothing overtly suspicious. Marcus Ellis possessed a clean record, serving as CEO of Ellis Development and acting as a significant philanthropist with connections to many of Chicago's prominent figures. Claire Anderson Ellis had discontinued her career following her marriage to Ellis. And Lily, a student previously achieving straight A grades, had not previously raised any concerns among teachers or counselors. Officer Mitchell was joined by Dr. Rebecca Torres, the department's child psychologist, at his desk. I noticed your flag regarding the Anderson Ellis welfare check. I'd like to understand what led to it. During our meeting, Mitchell detailed Apollo's reactions and the nuanced interactions he observed. Torres explained that children who experience controlling environments often develop particular coping strategies. The extreme stillness you mentioned, the scripted responses, can be signs of that, although not conclusive proof. It warrants further consideration. The dog's behavior is also noteworthy. These animals are capable of detecting stress hormones, subtle facial expressions, and even shifts in breathing that humans might not notice. Over the subsequent 2 weeks, Mitchell scheduled multiple follow-up appointments at the Anderson residence. The observations remained the same. Apollo's atypical focus on Lily, the child's slight decrease in anxiety near the dog, and Marcus Ellis's growing frustration with the police investigations. On one occasion when Ellis was not present, Mitchell noted Lily's inherent connection with Apollo. He's a very special dog, Mitchell said as she cautiously stroked Apollo's fur. He had been trained to understand specific signals, methods of communication without verbal interaction. Lily's eyes widened. Like secret codes? Mitchell confirmed. Exactly like that. Apollo knows dozens of commands that appear as typical movements to everyone else. Something in Lily's expression changed, a glimmer of interest that seemed to break through her carefully constructed demeanor. Following that visit, Mitchell spoke with his sergeant regarding his increasing worries. Sergeant Diaz told him that Ellis had submitted a formal complaint concerning Mitchell's repeated visits and had expedited the custody hearing. Ellis is requesting full custody of Lily, alleging Claire is emotionally unstable. That's a classic example of isolation tactics, Mitchell stated. I understand that, and you know that, Diaz replied. However, Ellis has relationships with the police commissioner and many judges in Cook County. Relying solely on a dog's actions and personal feelings isn't enough. 2 days prior to the custody hearing, Mitchell made a choice that could possibly impact his career. He planned to meet Claire and Lily at a small park close to their home, bringing Apollo as part of a community dog demonstration. As Claire was talking with another parent, Mitchell positioned himself next to Lily on a quiet bench. Lily, do you recall when I mentioned that Apollo responds to specific cues? He inquired, maintaining a relaxed tone as the child stroked the German shepherd. She responded affirmatively, her gaze frequently shifting to her mother, ensuring they weren't being observed. I'm going to show you a special one, Mitchell said, using a discreet gesture, his fingers briefly touching and then parting, resembling the smoothing of an unseen sheet. When Apollo witnesses this, he understands that immediate assistance is required. Lily rehearsed the gesture multiple times. Her small fingers mirrored Mitchell's actions. Apollo observed closely, his training surfacing as he detected a new directive being set. This is just between us, Mitchell clarified. Sometimes adults struggle to grasp when children require assistance. But Apollo consistently understands. What occurs when he observes it? Lily inquired, her voice a soft whisper. He responds to safeguard whoever initiates the signal. It is his most vital responsibility. A subtle change crossed the child's face, a brief spark of hope instantly concealed by a familiar composure. Her gaze drifted toward the playground. Marcus doesn't like dogs, she observed. Lily, Mitchell said with deliberate care, if you ever feel scared or unsafe, this signal works anywhere. Apollo can see it, even in places where people aren't supposed to talk, like court. The question highlighted the depth of her understanding of her circumstances, surpassing what would be expected of an 8-year-old. As Mitchell confirmed, his heart felt burdened by the possibility of overstepping professional limits. The morning of the custody hearing dawned with a palpable tension. Judge Eleanor Wilson was well known, 23 years on the bench had established her as a figure of both reverence and apprehension within Chicago's legal community. Mitchell was seated in the gallery's second row, Apollo lying at his feet in a full-service harness. His arrival initially drew attention, but Mitchell possessed the necessary authorization. K-9 officers were not obligated to be separated from their partners during testimony. Claire Anderson was seated next to her attorney, Janet Kaplan, a skilled but visibly less experienced family law specialist. The difference in legal representation was striking. Ellis's team presented matching leather portfolios, while Kaplan carried a slightly worn briefcase. Marcus Ellis entered the room with the air of someone accustomed to authority, acknowledging Judge Wilson with a comfortable nod. Mitchell observed how multiple court personnel adjusted their posture as he walked by, a quiet indication of respect afforded to those of prominence. Ellis paused to greet an individual in the gallery, a man Mitchell identified as an aide to a police commissioner. Ellis's lead attorney, Lawrence Henderson, commenced their presentation. The account he delivered was carefully constructed. Claire Anderson, portraying a mother struggling with emotional instability, fabricated worries regarding her daughter to create distance between them and a caring stepfather. Images of family vacations, school events, and charitable galas were displayed on a presentation screen, depicting what appeared to be a flawless modern family. Mrs. Anderson Ellis's behavior has escalated into heightened paranoia, Henderson reported, leading to several unwarranted police welfare checks that have deeply affected the child. Claire's testimony followed, her voice becoming more even as she detailed the alterations in Lily's behavior since Marcus had exerted greater control. She ceased discussing her daily activities and stopped entertaining friends. She adheres to guidelines I did not establish. Henderson's cross-examination was precise. Isn't it true, Mrs. Ellis, that you've received treatment for anxiety and tend to transfer your anxieties onto your daughter? The courtroom felt charged with unstated accusations by the time Mitchell was asked to testify. He moved towards the witness stand, Apollo keeping a steady stance nearby. Mitchell detailed only the information recorded in official reports, Lily's behavior, the conditions at home, and the interactions he observed. He omitted any discussion of Apollo's responses or his personal doubts, anticipating immediate objections based on them being considered speculation. Henderson's cross-examination unfolded precisely as Mitchell had foreseen, suggesting that Mitchell had exceeded his authority and shown prejudice against Marcus Ellis. Throughout the proceedings, Apollo remained motionless beside the witness stand, although Mitchell sensed the slight tightness in his partner's posture. As Mitchell concluded his questioning, Judge Wilson declared, "I'd like to speak with Lily Anderson in my chambers. Parents, attorneys may observe, but parents will remain here." Requests from the judge weren't uncommon in contentious custody disputes, but Mitchell observed how Ellis subtly leaned forward, his hand tightening on the table's edge. For the first time, a fissure emerged in his seemingly flawless demeanor. Judge Wilson's chambers provided a noticeable difference from the official courtroom, featuring bookshelves filled with legal references and a relaxed seating space intended to comfort children. A court reporter was situated quietly in the corner, while the attorneys arranged themselves near the wall. Peeking through a slightly ajar door, Mitchell observed Lily settled in a large leather chair facing the judge. Apollo stayed with Mitchell in the courtroom, both having a visible view into the chambers via the doorway. The dog's focus hadn't shifted. His dark eyes were intently fixed on Lily, a gaze that would have worried Mitchell under different conditions. "Lily, do you know why we are all here today?" Judge Wilson inquired, her usually firm voice gentled. The child responded, her answer sounding practiced even from afar, because her mom and Marcus were fighting about her. That's right, and my job is to figure out what's best for you. She needed Lily to tell her the truth about how things were at home. Can you do that? Lily nodded, her hands tightly clasped in her lap. Do you feel safe at home with your mom and Marcus? Yes, Your Honor. The words came quickly, but Mitchell noticed the slight tremble in Lily's shoulders. Judge Wilson proceeded with typical inquiries regarding school, daily life at home, and Lily's relationships with both parents. Lily's responses were consistently courteous and well-mannered, but they grew increasingly stiff and rehearsed. Lily, has anyone instructed you on what to say to me today? The judge asked pointedly. The child's gaze shifted briefly toward Ellis's attorney before returning to her lap. No, Your Honor. The judge pressed, are you certain? It's permissible to tell me if someone has. The room fell silent. Mitchell sensed Apollo's muscles tightening next to him. Marcus instructed me to convey my happiness, Lily finally whispered. He stated that unfavorable consequences would befall Mom if I failed to do so. Ellis's attorney approached. Your Honor, I object, he began. Judge Wilson halted him with a raised hand. Mr. Henderson, you are present solely as an observer. Save your objections for the courtroom, she stated. What sort of bad things? Judge Wilson inquired softly. The child's eyes filled with tears. Before she could respond, Marcus Ellis abruptly entered the courtroom, forcing open the main chamber door and appearing visibly angry. This is outrageous. She's being manipulated. Court officials attempted to restrain him, but Ellis was already advancing towards the chambers. In that crucial moment, Mitchell noticed something. Lily's small hand performed the quiet gesture they had rehearsed, her fingers briefly touching and then parting in a movement so delicate it would have been overlooked by anyone not intently observing. Apollo's response was immediate. Even before Mitchell could give a spoken instruction, the German shepherd sprang forward with forceful accuracy, covering the space between them and the chambers in seconds. As court officers reached for their weapons, the gallery burst with shocked cries, and Judge Wilson stood up. Order, she declared, her powerful voice silencing the room. Everyone froze except Apollo, who moved past the bailiff and stood directly before Lily's chair, creating a shield between her and the doorway. Mitchell hurried forward. Apollo, hold. He gave the order, even though the dog had already adopted a measured, protective posture instead of a threatening one. Precisely as his training instructed for the signal Lily had provided, the courtroom erupted into disorder. Alice was held back by court officers, yelling about that dangerous animal. His lawyers requested Apollo's prompt removal. Claire rose, her expression a mixture of bewilderment and optimism. Everyone will be silent. Judge Wilson's voice pierced the commotion. Officer Mitchell, please describe the events that occurred. Mitchell stood at attention, keenly aware of the precariousness of his career. Your Honor, Apollo responded to a distress signal. What distress signal? The judge inquired. Before Mitchell could respond, Lily spoke, her voice gaining strength as she moved to stand beside Apollo, one hand resting on his back. I did it. I gave him the secret signal. The courtroom became silent, all eyes fixed on the small girl who appeared to have suddenly found her voice. Marcus hurts me, she continued, the words flowing out as if a barrier had given way. He tells me no one will believe me because he is influential. He compels me to rehearse what to say to teachers and doctors. He also hurts Mom when she attempts to intervene. Apollo remained motionless next to her, his training enabling him to maintain a protective stance while remaining non-aggressive, acting as a living barrier between Lily and the man she feared. Judge Wilson's expression changed from shock to firm determination. Officer Mitchell, please proceed to the bench with your K-9. Bailiff, secure Mr. Ellis. Court reporter, please ensure every word is transcribed. Your Honor, I can explain, Mitchell began, standing before Judge Wilson with Apollo and Lily beside him. You instructed my K-9 partner to respond to a signal from Lily, a nonverbal distress signal that she could use if she felt threatened or unsafe. I concede it was an unusual course of action, Judge Wilson concluded, her intense focus assessing him. How long had you been preparing for this, Officer Mitchell? 3 days, Your Honor, Mitchell replied, following several welfare visits where Apollo and I both noted troubling behaviors. The judge then shifted her gaze to Lily, who remained with one hand gently on Apollo's back. Lily, did Officer Mitchell instruct you to make these statements concerning your stepfather? No, ma'am, Lily responded, her voice quiet but more distinct than previously. He simply demonstrated how to contact Apollo should I feel frightened. He stated Apollo would comprehend even if adults did not. And what prompted your fear today? The judge inquired. Lily briefly looked toward Ellis, whose eyes glowed with intense anger. Because Marcus indicated that if I shared what occurs at home, he would cause Mom to disappear permanently. He stated that no one would believe me, given his familiarity with the judges and police chiefs. Ellis's lead attorney moved forward. Your Honor, these are demonstrably false accusations. The officer has undermined his K-9's training to influence a child into M. You'll receive no concessions in my courtroom, Mr. Henderson. Judge Wilson abruptly interrupted him. Accompanied by Apollo, Lily's statements flowed more easily. She recounted a pattern of deliberate psychological abuse, including being confined to her room for errors, such as toys left out, and being compelled to recite pre-prepared responses before school daily, along with witnessing Marcus threaten her mother while believing she was asleep. He maintains a dedicated room in the basement for disciplinary actions. She shared, her voice barely audible, noting it has a timer on the door. She stated that if she cried or made noise, he would extend the duration. Claire covered her mouth, her face displaying visible shock. The renovation project, she murmured. He said it was a wine cellar. I've never even seen it finished. Ellis moved forward again, despite the restraining hands. This is absurd. The dog charged at me. This entire proceeding is compromised. Judge Wilson had heard enough. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Ellis to the holding area. I'm issuing an immediate emergency protective order for both Lily and Claire Anderson. As Ellis was removed, still protesting, Judge Wilson turned to Mitchell. Officer, although your procedures were unusual, they seem justified. I request that Apollo's training records and a complete report on the signal system you implemented be submitted to this court by tomorrow. Furthermore, she continued, speaking to the entire court, I am ordering an immediate search of the Ellis residence, particularly the basement area Lily described, and a thorough investigation into these allegations. Mitchell stepped forward. Your Honor, with your permission, Apollo and I would like to help with that search. His training in identifying signs of distress could prove beneficial. Judge Wilson indicated her agreement. Court reporter, please record that I am formally requesting the presence of Officer Mitchell and K-9 Apollo to carry out the search warrant. The judge then looked directly at Lily, her serious expression becoming gentler. Lily, what Apollo did today demonstrated great courage, and so did you. Lily smiled for the first time since Mitchell had known her. It was a real smile that changed her face, moving it from the appearance of a frightened child to one showing the beginning of restored confidence. As Mitchell and Apollo exited the courtroom, they discovered the hallway in a managed state of disorder. Ellis was undergoing processing for transfer to holding, his costly suit seeming out of place with the handcuffs on his wrists. Noticing Mitchell and Apollo, his calm demeanor shattered entirely. You'll regret this, he hissed. Do you have any idea who I am? Who my friends are? Mitchell maintained Apollo in a perfect heel position, the dog's disciplined composure sharply contrasting with Ellis's loss of control. Mr. Ellis, I suggest you reserve your comments for your lawyer. Ellis unexpectedly strained against the officer's hold. His face twisted. That dog should be put down. And you? Apollo remained balanced, showing no reaction to the sudden movement, reinforcing his remarkable training. One of the officers noted calmly that the charges now included threatening a police officer. Detective Sophia Reyes approached Mitchell, an experienced investigator with Chicago PD's Special Victims Unit. She had been called in immediately following Judge Wilson's orders. That's something else, Mitchell, she said, nodding toward Apollo. Judge Wilson has already signed the search warrant for Ellis's home. We move in 30 minutes. A search of the Ellis residence confirmed Lily's account. A soundproofed room in the basement, presented as a wine cellar but featuring a complex locking system and timer. CSI technicians meticulously documented all details, including the camera surveillance system and the small cot located in the corner. He recorded it all, Reyes stated softly, showing Mitchell a concealed panel containing digital storage devices. The payments were likely his insurance, intended to ensure the child and mother cooperated. Now, this serves as evidence that will likely result in a lengthy prison sentence for him. Apollo systematically examined the area, identifying specific locations that subsequently yielded further evidence, including a child's drawings concealed beneath the cot, which caused even the experienced investigators to become silent. At the courthouse, Claire and Lily waited in a secure conference room, accompanied by Dr. Torres. Upon Mitchell and Apollo's return, Lily rushed to the dog, embracing him with a trust that was unmistakable. "Thank you," Claire said to Mitchell, her voice calm for the first time since he'd met her, "for believing what I couldn't even fully see." "Apollo deserves the credit," Mitchell replied. He knew something was wrong from that first day. Dr. Torres arrived, holding a notepad. "Judge Wilson has prioritized this case significantly. Ellis's bail hearing is already set, but considering the evidence gathered today and his conduct in court, it is improbable he will be released on bail." Detective Reyes shared an update. Ellis's known contacts are attempting to separate themselves from the situation. 2 individuals have already provided accounts detailing things they observed. Judge Wilson entered the conference room, having removed her judicial robes and opting for a cardigan and slacks. She lowered herself to Lily's level. She stated softly, "What you did today has assisted us in understanding the situation. You demonstrated considerable bravery." Lily glanced at the judge. "Apollo helped me be brave." Wilson offered a smile, then addressed Mitchell. "Officer, the court will be formally recognizing both you and Apollo. Your actions, though unorthodox, reflected the most important values of safeguarding and assistance." Wilson added that he would be seeking advice from child advocacy specialists regarding the establishment of a structured canine assistance program to support children experiencing trauma within the court system. The events observed today indicate potential avenues that warrant thorough investigation. As the judge left the room, Mitchell approached Apollo, gently stroking the dog's smooth fur. What started as a standard welfare check had evolved into a situation that could potentially alter how the legal system safeguards its most vulnerable individuals. Claire moved forward, with Lily at her side. "Officer Mitchell," the doctor stated, "we should aim to create consistent routines in the coming days." Lily inquired, "Is it possible for Apollo to come visit sometime?" Lily concluded, her voice more assertive than Mitchell had ever observed it. Mitchell smiled. "Apollo and I would be delighted. He demonstrates considerable skill with board games, though he consistently requests to be the dog piece in Monopoly." This light-hearted remark elicited the second authentic smile observed from Lily, a valuable indication of a child starting the gradual return to a typical childhood. "Have you ever observed the remarkable intuition of a service animal?" Apollo's story serves as a reminder that, at times, animals can perceive things that humans may overlook, identifying emotions, fears, and needs that are unexpressed. They frequently demonstrate a greater understanding of nonverbal cues and behavioral alterations than we possess. What indicators do you believe animals notice that humans overlook? Research indicates dogs can identify changes in our bodily chemistry, microexpressions, and even minor adjustments in our breathing. Apollo's training amplified these innate talents, yet numerous pet owners share comparable experiences of their animals sensing distress, illness, or danger prior to its obviousness. Could you rely on a canine officer's judgment in a courtroom setting? Apollo's unusual behavior in Judge Wilson's courtroom sparks interesting discussions about potentially integrating these remarkable animals further into our justice system, particularly when safeguarding vulnerable witnesses who may struggle to communicate openly. Please share your opinions and experiences in the comments. Have you ever observed an animal perceive something before people noticed? We'd be interested in reading your stories. If you found Apollo and Officer Mitchell's story moving, please subscribe and enable notifications to ensure you don't miss future stories of incredible canine heroes. Our channel features extraordinary accounts of police dogs going above and beyond. Share this video with friends and family who appreciate the remarkable bond between handlers and their canine partners. For more incredible stories of loyal heroes who serve and protect, please watch our previous videos, which are appearing on your screen now. Remember, sometimes the most powerful voice for justice doesn't speak at all. It barks. The funeral was silent, heavy with grief until the police dog acted. He jumped onto his handler's casket, and his subsequent actions left the entire room in tears. Here's what happened. But before we get into today's story, drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. And if you love extraordinary police dog stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next. The October morning arrived gray and somber, as if the sky reflected the sadness of those assembled at Oakwood Memorial Chapel. A cool breeze stirred the nearby maple trees, their crimson leaves sometimes detaching to briefly swirl, before landing on the gravel pathway where numerous police cruisers were arranged in precise formation. Within the chapel, the atmosphere was thick with the combined fragrances of polished wood, floral displays, and the palpable stress of shared sorrow. Officers in dress blues occupied the pews, their badges adorned with black mourning bands. Their faces, typically hardened by years of service, visibly strained to remain composed as they observed the flag-draped casket at the room's front. Officer Michael Mike Reeves, 34 years old and an 8-year veteran of the Riverside Police Department, a recipient of 2 commendations for bravery, rested silently within the wooden box. An official portrait, positioned on an easel next to the casket, depicted a man with keen hazel eyes and a gentle smile that didn't fully convey a solemn demeanor. In the front row, Mike's parents were seated, visibly burdened by the sorrow of outliving their son. His mother held a handkerchief, while his father, a former officer, gazed forward. Next to them, Mike's sister Elaine dabbed at tears that appeared unending, her shoulders shaking with each inhale. Near the side entrance, a disturbance caught the attention of several people. Officer Terrence Wilson worked to manage a Belgian Malinois, whose strong physique trembled with anticipation. The dog's golden brown eyes moved quickly around the chapel, examining every face and every area, as if looking for someone expected to be present. "Easy, Ranger," Wilson said softly, tightening his hold on the leash as the dog made a low, mournful sound. Ranger had been Mike's partner for 4 years. Working as a team, they had located missing children, arrested dangerous suspects, and uncovered hidden contraband that could have gone unnoticed. They were the K-9 unit's most accomplished team. Now Ranger's ears twitched, his nose working intensely, showing uncertainty in his posture. 4 years prior, Officer Mike Reeves had been in the impersonal hallway of the regional K-9 training center, anxiously straightening his uniform collar. Following 6 years of patrol work, he received approval for the K-9 unit, a goal he'd held since his academy days. The training sergeant, a stern woman named Martinez with 20 years of experience visible on her face, guided him towards the kennels. She cautioned him, her keys making noise as they walked, not to become too attached too quickly. He would work with 3 prospects before final assignments were made. Some partnerships succeed, others fail. The dog's choice is as important as your own. A lively atmosphere filled the kennel area. German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, and Dutch Shepherds were watchful in their enclosures. Martinez paused at the 3rd kennel, where a tan Malinois with distinctive facial markings stood rigidly at attention, amber eyes following every movement. "This is Ranger, 18 months old, imported from a European working line," Martinez said, observing Mike's reaction. "He has a high drive, high intelligence, and could be too intense for some handlers." A prior candidate found him unmanageable, describing him as too intense. Mike lowered himself to the dog's level, keeping eye contact. Typically, police dogs displayed immediate enthusiasm or aggression upon approach, but Ranger was an exception. He stayed perfectly still, evaluating Mike with a disconcerting intensity, as if peering directly through him. "Hey there, partner," Mike said gently. At those words, a slight alteration appeared in Ranger's stance. A minor change that only Martinez detected, his eyebrows lifting a little. The dog moved toward the kennel gate with careful steps, paused once to sniff at Mike's offered hand, then settled, holding eye contact. "Well," Martinez said, "that's certainly not what I expected." The bond was instant, though neither person nor dog could articulate it. When they started training together the following day, the other handlers observed in amazement as Ranger seemed to predict Mike's instructions almost before he voiced them. By the third week, Martinez discontinued the rotations, formally assigning pairs. Their initial significant challenge arose 6 months later, a missing 10-year-old child in Oakwood Park. The search had been ongoing for hours, with numerous agencies searching the thick woodland as night fell and temperatures decreased. Mike observed Ranger assessing the scene, tracking a scent trail that other canines had overlooked. "He's detected something," Mike transmitted to the command post. "We are proceeding east towards the creek bed." Rain had begun to fall, washing away scent particles, but Ranger never hesitated. He led Mike through thickets and over fallen trees until they found the boy, huddled beneath an overhanging embankment, hypothermic but alive. Their partnership extended beyond statistics. Mike had remained single, his apartment becoming their shared domain. Morning runs continued regardless of weather. Evenings were spent reinforcing training exercises that had become more like games, their lives completely intertwined. Mike's parents had thoughtfully provided Ranger with a Christmas stocking, acknowledging him as part of the family. The 911 call was received at 2:34 a.m. on Thursday, reporting a domestic disturbance on Elm Street, a residential area of modest single-family homes. Dispatch records indicated this was the third call originating from that address within the past 2 months, with prior incidents resolved without any arrests. Officer Chun was already en route, requesting additional support as per standard protocol. K9-7 was ready to assist, as Mike had radioed, with Ranger alert in the specialized compartment behind him. Acknowledged K9-7. The report indicated a male subject, possibly armed, with children present in the home. Mike's cruiser arrived approximately half a block from the address, maintaining dark lights to minimize the risk of escalation. Chen's patrol car was already on scene, positioned strategically to provide cover. Mike secured Ranger's tactical harness, and the dog instantly transitioned to working mode. "Report, what is the situation?" "Mike," she said as they neared Chun, who was positioned behind her vehicle door, hand on her holster. The male subject was identified as Jacob Reynolds, age 42. His wife had initiated the call, stating he had been consuming alcohol and had begun threatening her with a handgun when she announced her intention to leave him. 2 children were present inside the residence, aged 8 and 5. The house appeared dark, with only a single light illuminating the living room. Abruptly, the front door swung open, and a woman emerged, holding 2 children, all still in pajamas. "He's got a gun," she gasped, as Chen directed them towards the patrol cars. He stated he wasn't returning to jail. A records check verified Reynolds had previous arrests for assault and unlawful possession of a firearm. The situation had progressed from a domestic disturbance to a potential armed standoff. Reinforcements were on the way, estimated time of arrival 4 minutes. Dispatch updated, SWAT alerted but assembling. "We might not have 4 minutes, Mike responded, observing movement at the window. The subject appeared increasingly agitated. Additional patrol units arrived, officers taking positions around the perimeter. Mike released Ranger's leash, giving him a hand signal to stay close, a command that would keep the dog within 3 feet without restricting his movement. They proceeded to the side of the house, utilizing shadows for cover. "Got a visual," Mike reported quietly into his shoulder. Mike's subject in living room, confirmed armed, handgun in right hand, appears highly agitated. Captain Walsh's voice crackled over the radio. "Hold positions."
Ostage négociateur en route.
Reynolds, however, disregarded the order. The front door exploded inward. A figure appeared against the light within, weapon raised. "Stay back," he yelled, swinging the gun haphazardly between officers. Reynolds discharged a stray shot that struck Chen's patrol car. Officers retreated behind cover, issuing verbal instructions but refraining from firing due to the family's location behind vehicles. Reynolds moved down the front steps. One now pointed directly at the group, including his wife and children. Mike assessed the situation instantly. Reynolds had an unobstructed view of his family. Officers lacked a secure vantage point, and the man's finger was closing on the trigger. Mike gave Ranger the silent command they'd practiced repeatedly. 2 quick taps on his thigh, indicating an apprehension attack. Ranger surged forward with explosive speed, a tan blur in the darkness. At the same time, Mike moved to flank, positioning himself between Reynolds and his intended targets. Reynolds noticed the dog approaching and redirected his weapon towards the new danger. 2 shots echoed through the night. Ranger connected with Reynolds' arm, the expertly trained bite causing the man to drop his weapon. Both men went down, but Reynolds managed to fire first, with a bullet impacting Mike's chest just beneath his vest. A second shot followed from Mike's service weapon as he fell, hitting Reynolds in the shoulder, disabling him but not fatally. "Officer down! Officer down!" Chen's voice broke over the radio as she hurried to Mike, who had fallen onto the asphalt. Ranger kept his hold on Reynolds until another officer secured the suspect, then immediately moved away from the scene, a course of action he would not typically take, and rushed to Mike's side. The dog whined, pawing at his partner's chest where blood was quickly spreading across his uniform. "Stay with me, Reeves," Chen urged, applying pressure to the wound. "Bus is 2 minutes out." Mike's breathing came in shallow gasps, his eyes finding Ranger's. He whispered, "Good boy," lifting a shaking hand to touch the dog's head. "Best partner ever." Ranger lay down beside him, pressing his body against Mike's side as paramedics arrived. They worked frantically, loading Mike into the ambulance, but the bullet had struck at an angle that sent it beneath the protective vest, severing a major artery. Officer Michael Reeves was pronounced dead at Riverside Memorial Hospital at 3:28 a.m. While emergency personnel desperately attempted resuscitation, Ranger stayed in the emergency room hallway, with Officer Wilson holding his leash. The dog's eyes remained fixed on the trauma bay doors. When the doctor finally came out, shaking his head, Ranger appeared to comprehend before any words were spoken. His body drooped, the confident stance faltering as a howl began, a sound so intense, so resembling human sorrow, that seasoned emergency staff averted their gaze. Inside the chapel, the funeral service had commenced. Chief Roberts moved to the podium, his usual strong demeanor tempered by sorrow. Officer Michael Reeves represented the epitome of what it means to serve in the badge. He began to speak, his resonant voice firm despite the emotion evident in his eyes. During his 8 years of service, he demonstrated consistent courage, compassion, and dedication to this community. Nearby, Ranger's restlessness grew. Wilson held the leash securely, yet the dog's attention remained fixed, focused on the casket where his partner rested. The chief noted that Mike's devotion to his canine partner, Ranger, had forged one of the most successful teams in our department. Together they were credited with over 200 successful operations, saving countless lives and enhancing the safety of our community. Mike's mother wept softly, comforted by her husband's embrace. His sister Elaine remained stiffly beside them, sometimes touching the canine unit pin Mike had given her last Christmas. Captain Walsh then stepped to the podium, recounting a memory of Mike's first day on patrol. He arrived 30 minutes early, his uniform so impeccably pressed it appeared it could have cut paper, Walsh remembered, prompting a few sorrowful smiles. When I inquired about his promptness, he stated, "My dad always told me if you're on time, you're already late." Mike consistently exceeded expectations. As personal recollections transitioned into the official ceremony, Ranger displayed increasing signs of distress. The dog breathed rapidly, adjusting his posture, and kept his gaze fixed on the casket. Wilson worked to manage the situation, understanding the importance of the moment, yet obligated to ensure order throughout the service. The department chaplain commenced the religious segment of the service, his words of comfort seeming inadequate given the sight of a flag-draped casket and a room filled with grief. Though Officer Reeves walks through the valley of the shadow of death, he fears no evil, the chaplain stated. At these words, Ranger emitted a low whine that resonated through the quiet chapel, and several heads turned, with expressions of understanding rather than annoyance appearing on their faces. The service continued with the presentation of Mike's badge and service weapon to his parents. The department's bagpipe player moved to the front, the poignant melody of Amazing Grace echoing through the chapel. As the bagpipes ceased, a quiet stillness settled over the chapel. The funeral director walked to the podium, ready to provide directions for the procession to the cemetery. Prior to speaking, Ranger's demeanor changed significantly. The Belgian Malinois froze, his body trembling as if electrified. His eyes fixed on the casket widened. His breathing quickened, nostrils flaring as he perceived something only he could detect. Every muscle in his powerful frame tensed, coiling like a spring. "Something's wrong," Wilson whispered to Martinez, tightening his grip on the leash. "He's never acted like this before." Martinez recognized the signs. "That's not aggression," she whispered back. "That's recognition." At that moment, Ranger initiated his action with a swift advance that surprised Wilson. The dog broke free of the leash held by his handler. Multiple officers reacted to try and stop him, but Ranger was too quick. His actions were deliberate and purposeful as he sped down the central aisle. A collective intake of breath spread through the chapel as the Belgian Malinois moved toward the front, his paws making no sound on the carpeted floor. Mike's mother emitted a quiet cry, his father partially rising from his seat. Chief Roberts prepared to proceed, yet Ranger's behavior created a moment of hesitation for all present. It wasn't a display of hostility or fear, it was a sign of clear intention. Ranger approached the casket and halted, inhaling deeply around its sides. Then, with the same effortless skill that had distinguished him during his service, he jumped up, his front paws landing softly on the casket's rim. For a brief instant, he maintained his balance there, his amber eyes assessing the gathered mourners as if awaiting consent. There was no movement and no sound. A hush fell over the entire room. Ranger, with deliberate motions, pulled himself completely onto the casket, his nails producing the faintest clicking sound on the polished wood. The American flag covering the casket moved a little under his weight. The dog turned once, then positioned himself on top of the casket, directly above where Mike's chest would be. "Oh my God," Elaine whispered, tears flowing down her face. Ranger lowered his head, pressing his nose against the wood. He took a deep breath, then released it in a trembling exhale that appeared to hold all the grief imaginable. His ears pressed against his head as he whined, a sound so sorrowful it seemed to permeate the very walls. "Should I?" Wilson began, taking a tentative step forward. Captain Walsh raised a hand, halting him. "No," he said softly, "let him be." The dog's behavior shifted from active to observant. He assumed the familiar alert stance he had held many times in the patrol car, watchful, protective, prepared. His gaze moved across the room as if still performing his duties, still safeguarding his partner. Ranger remained perfectly still, his chest rising and falling in a pattern that appeared synchronized with an unseen power. The first shock among those grieving subsided into a deep silence, not distressing, but respectful. Then Ranger performed an action that shifted the moment from poignant to truly unforgettable. With deliberate slowness, he lifted his right paw and pressed it flat against the American flag, precisely over the spot where Mike's badge would be on his uniform. He maintained the position, unwavering, resolute, and clear. Elaine reacted with a gasp, her hand covering her mouth. "The salute," she breathed, her voice just audible to those close by. "That's Mike's special signal." A quiet buzz of conversation arose within the chapel, as those familiar with the meaning shared it with others. 3 years prior, Mike had developed a distinctive training cue with Ranger. It was a discreet signal, used exclusively between them, a customized gesture that Ranger would execute only in reaction to Mike's particular hand movement. This was not a component of regular police K-9 instruction. It was intimate, unique, and shared solely by them. Officer Chun, who was present the night Mike passed, moved closer to Captain Walsh. "Mike's last touch," she whispered, her voice cracking. Prior to the ambulance arrival, he touched Ranger's head in the manner he always used when issuing that command. It wasn't simply a gesture, Martinez explained softly to those present. It represented their method of conveying a message, signifying mission accomplishment when verbal communication was impossible. I have never observed another team exhibiting such a profound connection. As Ranger held the salute, his gaze remained steady and observant, as if anticipating additional direction. A profound quiet settled over the chapel, punctuated only by quiet weeping from Mike's family. Mike's father rose abruptly, his action capturing everyone's attention. The former officer moved toward the casket deliberately, maintaining a dignified posture despite the sadness visible on his face. He halted near Ranger, standing respectfully without touching the dog. Then, with careful control, he performed a formal police salute. "Mission accomplished, son," he said, his voice thick with feeling but audible in the still room. One by one, each uniformed officer in the chapel stood and repeated the gesture, a multitude of salutes recognizing not only their deceased comrade, but the connection they were observing. Even civilian mourners rose, palms on their chests, accepting something beyond common comprehension. Ranger maintained his posture for a few more seconds, then gradually lowered his paw. He adjusted his position near the casket, turning to look at Mike's father. The dog's ears rose, his keen eyes observing the man's face. "He was so proud to be your partner," Mike's father said to Ranger, his voice a quiet murmur. "Every day he told us how fortunate he was to have you." The chaplain, who had been observing with evident feeling, moved forward once more. "In 20 years of service to the department," he said, speaking to those present, "I have conducted far too many ceremonies like this one. I have never seen such a demonstration of the connection between an officer and his canine partner." He paused, regaining his composure. "It seems there are relationships in this world that even death cannot break." The chaplain's words appeared to fill the chapel, offering solace where it had seemed impossible just before. Mike's mother, who had been almost devastated, stood a little straighter, her gaze fixed on Ranger. Mike frequently claimed the dog understood everything, she stated, in a voice audible to those around. He asserted Ranger could occasionally read his mind. She wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. "I believed he was overstating things." Chief Roberts approached the podium once more, his own demeanor noticeably strained. "I believe we should modify our proceedings," he remarked, glancing at the funeral director. "It seems Ranger will be with his partner for the rest of the service." Throughout the service, Ranger stayed on the casket, a quiet protector watching over his companion. The funeral director, showing impressive flexibility, modified the arrangements to accommodate the dog. The customary pallbearers were in place, though questions remained regarding the concluding procession. "We need to proceed to the cemetery shortly," the director said to Captain Walsh. Walsh responded with a nod, then moved towards the casket with deliberate steps. Ranger spoke softly, mirroring the tone he had often heard Mike use. "We need to take Mike now." The dog's ears twitched at the familiar name, his amber eyes following Walsh's movements. He remained still, shifting his weight and settling more firmly atop the American flag. Mike's sister, Elaine, rose from her seat, dabbing her eyes with a crumpled tissue. She walked towards the casket, her steps unsteady but resolute. She had observed the strong connection between her brother and his canine partner from the very beginning. She recalled numerous family dinners where Ranger sat at Mike's feet, and holidays where the dog received gifts alongside everyone else. "Ranger," she said softly, extending her hand palm up, mirroring the gesture she had seen Mike use many times. "It's okay, boy." The Belgian Malinois' attention turned to her, his nostrils flaring slightly as he analyzed her scent. The scent was close enough to Mike's to be recognized as belonging to his family. His ears moved forward, his head tilting as if assessing the situation. "Mike would be so proud of you," she said, her voice cracking. "You were the best partner he could have wished for, the best friend." Something in her words, or perhaps her tone, appeared to connect with the dog. Ranger looked from Elaine to the casket below him, then back to her. A quiet whine came from his throat. It wasn't a sound of distress now, but of inquiry. "I know," she murmured. "I miss him too." With extreme gentleness, she placed her hand on the dog's back. Ranger tensed briefly, then relaxed into the touch. Elaine stroked his fur, mirroring the way she'd seen her brother do after their shifts together. "We need to take Mike to his resting place now," she explained, speaking as if the dog understood every word. "Perhaps he did. Will you help us do that?" The chapel remained utterly silent, with everyone holding their breath as they observed this private moment. Ranger regarded Elaine for a considerable time, then rose slowly and deliberately. His movements were measured and respectful, ensuring his stability on the casket's curved top. For a brief moment, he stood rigidly, resembling a dog in peak condition. Then, with a grace that moved many to tears, he descended from the casket, stepping gently onto the carpeted floor near Elaine. Wilson moved forward with the leash, but Elaine halted him with a raised hand. "Let him walk with us," she said, "with no restrictions." Mike would have wanted it. Chief Roberts gave his consent, and Wilson moved aside. The pallbearers arranged themselves, raising the casket with coordinated precision. As the solemn procession began its descent down the central aisle, Ranger stepped alongside the casket, positioned at heel, precisely where he would have walked beside Mike during patrols. Outside, the autumn air held the fragrance of rain in the distance. The hearse door closed with a quiet finality, sealing the last chapter. Ranger watched, a flicker of confusion returning to his stance. Wilson approached, anticipating the dog might need reassurance, but before he could offer the leash, Ranger acted. The Belgian Malinois walked purposefully to the police motorcycle that would lead the procession, Mike's motorcycle, now solemnly draped in ceremonial black bunting. Ranger settled beside it, adopting the familiar posture he'd used countless times when Mike was getting ready for their shift. Captain Walsh looked at the motorcycle officer who would be leading the procession. "Can you accommodate him?" The officer, who had previously worked with Mike and Ranger for years, responded immediately. "It would be an honor, sir." With care, the officer assisted Ranger into the specially adapted sidecar, designed for K-9 transport during parades and ceremonial events. The dog relaxed, his demeanor alert yet composed, as if accepting the situation. Upon arrival at the cemetery, the concluding ceremonies proceeded with military formality. The honor guard conveyed the casket to the gravesite, with Ranger following closely, still unrestrained but maintaining impeccable control. The chaplain offered concluding words of solace as the casket was placed. As the formal folding of the flag commenced, Ranger observed with unwavering attention, following each action. The carefully folded triangle was given to Mike's mother, who held it close. Next, the rifle salute occurred, 3 volleys that echoed through the autumn air. Ranger reacted slightly at the initial shots, but remained in position. By the 3rd volley, he remained perfectly still at attention, seemingly acknowledging the respect being shown. As the bugler played taps, the somber notes lingered in the air. Ranger advanced 3 steps. With careful movements, he lifted his paw again, pressing it against the casket in that customary salute, a concluding gesture between comrades that moved many to tears. When the final note subsided, Ranger retreated, then settled down near the gravesite, his chin resting on his paws. He remained steadfast until the last mourner had left. The cemetery gradually emptied, with mourners departing in small groups, many taking a moment to look back at the striking scene. A devoted dog kept watch near his partner's final resting place. Mike's family were the last to leave the gravesite. His father knelt beside Ranger, placing a calloused hand on the dog's back. "You'll always have a home with us, boy," he said, his voice thick with feeling. Mike would have wanted us to support one another at this time. The Belgian Malinois looked up at him, its amber eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that went beyond the boundaries of species. He shifted a little closer, acknowledging the bond, then turned his attention to the casket now being placed in the ground. Captain Walsh came forward, taking off his formal hat and holding it to his chest. He stated that the department had considered Ranger's future. Traditionally, canines are retired after their handlers pass away. Mike's mother looked up sharply. He was too young to retire. Too skilled. Walsh nodded. "That's what we believe as well. With your permission, Officer Wilson has volunteered to become Ranger's new handler. They already share a connection, and Wilson initially trained with Mike." Elaine wiped away fresh tears. Mike would agree. He often said Wilson was the only other officer Ranger seemed to truly listen to. As if in agreement with her words, Ranger stood, shaking his coat slightly. He glanced between the family members and Walsh, then purposefully moved to stand beside Wilson, who had come closer quietly. "I'll never replace Mike," Wilson said, his voice faltering. "I wouldn't attempt to, but I pledge to you and Ranger that I will respect their partnership in our work together." Ranger looked once more at the gravesite, his stance conveying a sense of finality, an acceptance that had not been visible previously. With deliberate movements, he turned and walked beside Wilson toward the waiting police vehicles. He did not look back. As any good officer would, he was moving forward, carrying the legacy of his fallen partner with him into whatever missions awaited. The bond between a canine officer and their handler exemplifies one of the most sincere partnerships in law enforcement, founded on absolute trust, steadfast loyalty, and a connection that transcends verbal communication. The final tribute given by Ranger serves as a poignant reminder that profound feelings are often conveyed through actions rather than words. Have you ever observed a moment where an animal appeared to comprehend death or loss in a manner that seemed inexplicable? What fosters such strong connections between humans and their canine partners that they can surpass even the final parting? If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like and share it with someone who appreciates the extraordinary bond between handlers and their canine partners. These incredible dogs risk their lives alongside human officers every day, demonstrating courage and loyalty that deserve our recognition and respect. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story about police canine heroes. Our collection of true stories about dogs keeps expanding, with new videos added each week to display these extraordinary collaborations. Please view the suggested videos currently displayed for additional moving narratives that emphasize the steadfast commitment of police dogs nationwide. We will also see you again tomorrow at the same time with another fresh video.